So I think the focus has been misfocused on calories and sugar. If you were to eat 1,000 calories of donuts, of course you would go up in weight. But if you ate 1,000 calories of avocado, you would go down in weight on the same 1,000. So what's really going on? Turns out calories don't have a GPS. So when we eat them and they get inside our body, they don't know where to go or what to do until a certain somebody tells them. And of course that somebody being insulin. When the cell gets satiated, when it gets full, when it reaches maximum capacity, we call it supersaturation of glucose intracellularly. When that happens, our insulin is refractory. It's no longer able to push glucose into the cells. The reality is it would be working if it could work. So when you take the glucose at night, it's kind of normal. You get up in the morning and it's high. So where did that sugar come from? It's your cells dumping. Your cells are emptying glucose. This is a super important point for humans, not to drink when we eat. And this is going to surprise people because we're all taught that urine was supposed to be clear, right? A negative, urine's supposed to be cloudy. If your urine's clear, you're in trouble. I can't emphasize enough that the preeminent disaster maker in our human bodies and in our health is not sugar, it's insulin.
What are your thoughts on looking at C-peptide as well as a blood metric?
When I did, listen to this, you're jumping down a rabbit hole now, Ben, and I'm glad you went there because I wasn't going to go there, but since you said that, here we go.
Dr. Mike Grego, you just told me you stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Well, welcome to the Keto Camp podcast. Thanks for being ready, brother.
Thank you, Ben. I'm happy to be here. Really excited, for real.
We were just chatting a little bit about what we're going to cover today. And for those listening and watching, grab a pen and paper, take notes. This is going to be a life-changing conversation. I really believe it. And credit to our mutual friend, Jason Payne, who connected us. I'm grateful for you, Jason. Doc, you have 30 plus years of experience. And we're going to focus the conversation on insulin, glucose, insulin resistance, and diabetes. But before we even get there and talk about your book, how did you even get involved in the health space? What's the story? What were some of the things that came along the way that you had to learn, unlearn, and relearn? What's the backstory, bro?
Wow. Well, actually started with my grandfather when I was about 9 years old, 9, 10. My mother took me over there and said, your grandfather here, he's got a farm. He wants you to help. You need some help. So it was a regenerative organic farm. Of course, we didn't call it that. We just called it hard work. He tossed the pitchfork at me and said, turn that compost pile. And I was like, compost what? So, compost pile, we grew cover crops like soy, get on the tractor, drive it back into the soil. Wow, we delivered produce to the local and the industrial, the commercial stores around the area. So we got up real early, 3:00 in the morning, had to load 100 watermelons, 50-pound boxes of bananas and all that, and just get it. So I was T.C. Fry, Herbert Walker, Norman Walker, rather. I got that at a very early age. So I was like that. Then I went to school, went to chiropractic school first, then I went to naturopathic school. Then I got certified in functional neurology. So I went to a neuropathy clinic. And then I came back home. We wrote 2 books on keto, the nutritional ketogenic diet, and then clean keto versus dirty keto. And then eventually got over to insulin. And so that's kind of been my journey.
I love it. So you're a big fan of keto. I know that you are. I knew that because, hey, insulin-friendly diet, ketogenic diet. And you're right. There's a difference between clean keto and dirty keto. Let's talk a little bit about this epidemic that we see out there of metabolic inflexibility. There are studies suggesting that 88% of American adults have some variation of insulin resistance and diabetes. Other studies suggest 93% have some sort of metabolic syndrome going on. So the majority of every adult American have a problem here. And Harvard is predicting by the year 2030, 50% of American adults will be obese.
That's right.
So what is the actual root cause here when it comes to the metabolic syndrome we're seeing? Why do we see this problem, Doc?
Why do we see this? Well, I think the focus has been misfocused on calories and sugar in particular. So I always like to ask people to kind of get them refocused very quickly. If you were to eat 1,000 calories of donuts, for example, of course you would go up in weight. But if you ate 1,000 calories of avocado, you would go down in weight on the same 1,000. So what's really going on? Turns out calories don't have a GPS. So when we eat them and they get inside our body, they don't know where to go or what to do until a certain somebody tells them. And of course, that's somebody being insulin. If insulin is elevated or up, you're going to store those calories. If it's lower, you can use those calories for energy. So I think it's been our focus on calories instead of insulin.
Great explanation of the not having a GPS. The insulin will direct it, right? So you're right. Somebody eats 1,000 calories of donuts, probably going to gain weight. They're not going to have ideal energy levels. You do that with avocados. It might even be hard to do with avocados because it's so satiating versus the donuts. But you have better energy levels. You're going to burn fat. Insulin, I think, has a really bad PR team. I say that because insulin could be very important in the right amount for the healthy individual. But for most people, that insulin is called all the time. And that insulin is a bully. It's a nutrient sensor. And it's creating a lot of these issues we're seeing, insulin resistance, and then eventually type 2 diabetes.
Right.
Let's talk about insulin resistance first, Doc, and why eating a high carbohydrate diet and eating frequently creates this hyperinsulinemia. And then how long does it take until the average person gets diagnosed with diabetes? Meanwhile, this problem is happening year after year.
Sure, absolutely. I think I want to, if we can back up for just a second, because I want to finish that about insulin too. Being excessive in particular. When insulin particularly spikes, what we found in practice over 15%. And so we found that that's where everything goes awry as far as mTOR is concerned. Particularly mTOR is the mammalian target of rapamycin. You talked about it, Ben. You said it's a nutrient sensing pathway. That is the particular pathway that gets sets off when insulin becomes elevated. At that point, your cells eat more. And when a cell eats more, then it poops more. Remember, whatever eats poops, right? And when we go to the bathroom, therein lies some of the problem because of the lymphatic system. Remember, our cells are sitting in two fluids. One is blood, that's about 20% of the fluid. 80% is in the lymph, that's interstitial fluid. So you can kind of look at it like toilet bowl water, if you would like to, and say, because that's literally what it is. And so when the cell eats, it goes to the bathroom in the water, in the interstitial fluid. And at that point, if there's an overabundance of cellular metabolic waste, then we get interstitial stagnation, at which point metabolic acidosis, and then metabolic syndrome, what we understand. And those terms, metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, and hyperinsulinemia, are all three the same, right, when we look at it. And so when we talk about that from a cellular point, then coming and we turn it our direction at diabetes, then especially we're talking about type 2 here, right? Type 2.
Correct. Yeah.
So when the cell gets satiated, when it gets full, when it reaches maximum capacity, we call it supersaturation of glucose intracellularly. When that happens, our insulin is refractory. It's no longer able to push glucose into the cell. It's not that it doesn't want to or that it can't, it just can't, right? It just can't push it in. And so everybody looks to insulin and says, hey, well, you need a little help. You need some metformin, you need some Jardiance, you need some Mounjaro, you need a glipizide, you need DDP4, SGLT2s. You need something because you're not working. The reality is it would be working if it could work. In fact, there's a syndrome out there now. They call it Dawn syndrome. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, the Dawn phenomenon.
Dawn phenomenon, right? So when you take the glucose at night, it's kind of normal. You get up in the morning and it's high. And you didn't eat anything. Of course, you didn't cheat and get up in the middle of the night. So where did that sugar come from? It's your cells dumping. Your cells are emptying glucose. Hello, is that a syndrome? Is that a phenomenon? Is that something that should be rectified, or should we work with it? Should we intermittent fast? Should we get into our fat cells and our adipocytes to allow that dumping to continue? And of course, the answer is to allow the dumping to continue. Let the glucose come out of the cell so it could resensitize the insulin.
Makes so much sense to me. You mentioned insulin. I think you said when it spikes over 15%, you get an elevation of mTOR. Is that what you said?
That's right.
So carbohydrates will do that. Protein and fat won't, correct? Or it depends maybe on how much protein you have. But are carbohydrates the only macronutrient that would do that?
No, they are not. Just like you said, you started to say, protein can, if there's too much protein, because all protein breaks down to amino acids. And amino acids make sugar, gluconeogenesis, right, out of the liver. So yeah, you
So it
can
depends on how much protein
how much
in a
protein you
sitting.
take. Do you have a
For
recommendation? What do you recommend, Ben, to your people? I'm curious.
well, and a few years ago, I was very I wouldn't say anti-protein, but I was fat focused and more low to moderate protein. And I'm still like that for those who are brand new to keto. We're focused on fat and we do moderate to low protein. But once I get them fat adapted, then I bring the fat down and increase the dietary protein to get 30 to 40 grams at each of their meals of protein. I have seen, though, to your point, when they go over 80 grams or 90 grams of protein in a meal, it creates enough glucose via gluconeogenesis to raise glucose and drop ketones. So a good sweet spot, 40 to 60 grams of protein at a meal. That's what I teach, but I'm curious, what about you? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. Well, I'm glad I asked you first because the deal is with proteins, I go a little more fundamental. I look at, okay, if I'm looking at a protein, that's a complex amino acid. So my body has to break it down to amino acids so I can reconstruct it into a protein that I can use, the DNA, collagen, connective tissue, muscle, whatever. The point is, I'm gonna before I go into that too much further though. I think this is a super important point for humans, and that is not to drink when we eat. And I want to break that down. Not only does it dilute the hydrochloric acid, but when you look in terms of proteins being able to be digested, the hydrochloric acid has to stay around a pH of 2 in order for pepsinogen to be released from the globulate cells and the parietal cells. And then that pepsinogen turns into pepsin, and therefore it can take the proteins down to the peptides and then eventually the amino acids. So that's important because if we drink anything, of course, it's going to be over a pH of 2.
Yeah.
It's going to dilute that hydrochloric acid. It's not going to maintain the 2 pH, and we're not going to get the pepsinogen out for the pepsin. And then even the pancreatic enzymes themselves, they'll all be diluted as well. A lot of people have gastroparesis, right? Well, delayed emptying of the stomach, and I can only help being an innate. I believe in the body's marvelously and miraculously created to heal itself innately.
Amen.
Right. So if my juices aren't empty, if my stomach's not emptying, why? Is there a reason? Perhaps that the food hasn't been digested properly. Perhaps we shouldn't drink when we eat and dilute that whole process.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm with you. I rarely drink when I'm eating. So what are your recommendation? An hour away from a meal, 30 minutes away from, what's a good rule of thumb for you?
well, that depends on the type of drink, i.e., like if it's an alkaline water that has been microclustered, there isn't a lot of hydrogen molecules that need to be separated. Like normal water is very hydrophilic, it's self hydrophilic. It likes hanging around with other water molecules, about 100. So we have to break those hydrogen bonds down to about 99 to so it's just one water molecule because the aquaporin inside of a cell, there's a channel called an aquaporin, and that's about 4 angstroms. No, it's 3 angstroms big, and a single water molecule is 2.86 angstroms. So how many water molecules can fit into the cell at a time, right? So we have to break down those bonds. So I tell people to do a simple test as far as what you're drinking. If it's water, for example, then you drink some water and you do the hula hoop test, right? You just kind of hula hoop. I mean, I'm aging myself, but back when I was a kid, we had hula hoops. And we did this little dance that you kind of whirled around. And if you feel sloshing in there, that means the majority of the water is on your cell and not in your cell. And of course, where do we need to be hydrated? In the cell,
In
right?
the cell.
So if it's
Yeah, that's
inside the cell, there
interesting.
won't be any sloshing, not even immediately. So I use a particular ionized water. I do drink bottled water like I have here, like to make water, but Evian. But again, the BPA's, the phthalates to see through the plastic to make it soft. I mean, it's a game changer for the hormones because all those things are hormone disruptors, right? Endocrine disruptors.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's why we see demasculization, if I can say that without getting in trouble, in our society today, and women, the PCOS and our infertility issues, erectile dysfunction, all those things. Believe it or not, plastic's a big part. So to get a good ionizer that has pre-filters, I think is imperative. And we're getting on this subject a little, but I think it's a good subject to talk
It's
about.
it's a very important. I'm with you. I think in this day and age, more than nutrition, it's these forever chemicals, these toxins, these environmental pollutants that are everywhere, right? I have my glass, and I get Mountain Valley delivered to me in glass, but I also have a machine that makes hydrogen water, right? So it's filtered hydrogen water. So I'm making sure I rarely drink through plastic bottles unless I'm traveling, and I can't really get glass. But you're right. Here's the tough part about like tap water, for example. When I go to restaurants, they're going to give you water, and it's usually tap water. I'm not going to drink tap water because there's a whole bunch of crap in there. But even people that are colleagues of mine, like health educators and speakers, I go to dinner with them, they're drinking the tap water. And I'm wondering, like, don't they know that there's feminizing hormones in the tap water? There's birth control. There's
every
lead.
hospital drug that's outdated gets flushed down the commode still. You can look at the FDA hospital flush list. I thought it was a small list. There's thousands of drugs in that list. Thousands of drugs in that list.
I don't even know about the FDA hospital flush list. Okay, we got
flush list.
Everybody look that up. But here's the problem. I think that hospital flush list. I think that there's not like they drink it, but there's not an immediate negative feedback. So that's what they, if I were to like have a test, let's say I had a device that showed, okay, when you drink this tap water or do this bad behavior, this hormone drops or this feminizing hormone, you actually see it with real-time feedback. They wouldn't drink the water because they see that feedback, right? So how do we accomplish the message when there's no immediate feedback? It's a very challenging thing to do, I think.
Wow, that's a powerful question. How do we? Well, it's pain pleasure, right? We got to get down to NLP, Anthony Robbins, because pain pleasure. There's just got to be enough pain. So how can we make it painful enough for them to know that hospital drugs get flushed down, herbicides, pesticides, insecticides, glyphosate, Roundup is everywhere. If you're not using it, your next door neighbor is. It's getting in, and it's getting into.
And that's mitochondria poison right there.
100% rewrites the DNA, right? So it's horrendous. So I look at it like, and I look at the kidneys. I guess one thing I would look at, if my kidneys were not filtering correctly, and this is going to surprise people because we're all taught, or I was taught in school, that urine was supposed to be clear, right? Negative. Urine's supposed to be cloudy. In fact, I happen to have, because I just came off a live, I happen to have some urine from this morning. This is cloudy. This is my urine. Can't see through it. And you see, this is cellular metabolic waste. This is cellular poop. This is what cell poop looks like. And when
that's pretty dark. Your urine is pretty dark.
It is very dark. Now I came off. This was a 1-day dry fast.
Okay, I was going to say there's some dehydration there.
There is, but there's cloudiness nonetheless. The more important, not so much the color, but the cloud that you can't see through it. Right? You can't see my face through this, so it's cloudy. It's cloudy. And
are you drinking your urine? Are you doing urine therapy?
No, I want to drink this. This is metabolic waste. This is acid. This is toxic, hypoxic, acidic lymph, right? That's coming out. And my point is, just like if a baby pooped in the diaper and it was clear, it was see-through, we want to call some people over and say, look how cool that is. But in reality, we're missing toxemia. We're missing all the bad things coming out, right, into that fecal matter. And so same thing with the kidneys. They are filtration plants, and they should percolate. I got to give props out to Robert Morris. He's my guru with this. He's my mentor. And he's the first one to find that out. And wow, he should have won the Nobel Prize just for that, because urine is, again, that's how, we eat macro foods, right? We eat fats, we eat proteins, we do keto, and it breaks down our stomach, comes down through the pyloric sphincter into the duodenum, and then right out through the colon. And that's the macro, right, coming out in feces. But the micro also eats as well. The cells eat as well. And just like, again, you get up and go to the bathroom, they sit in the bathroom. Again, the interstitial fluid is their bathroom. And when they poop, if it doesn't come out, if it's clear, if it's see-through, if it's transparent, if your urine's clear, you're in trouble. That's what I tell my patients and my clients.
That makes sense.
Gotta have cloudy urine. Okay, so maybe we should kind of head back over to insulin.
Before we get back to insulin, I want to talk about, you just said you just completed a 24-hour dry fast. Is that what you said?
Right.
How often do you do those dry fasts? What's the longest you've gone?
The longest I've gone is 2.5 days. 2.5 days.
Dry fasting.
Dry fasting, yep.
Hard dry fast or soft dry fast?
I mean, this is no water, no nothing, no food.
No washing your hands, no showering or anything.
Right? No.
So that's considered more of like that's impressive, hard dry fast.
Yes. Yes.
Why do you do it? Do you do it because of the more autophagy? Just
I
let
have.
your innate intelligence do its thing.
Well, absolutely. Obviously, that autophagy, apoptosis. We can't forget the 2016 Nobel Prize winner. Some
Yeah.
doctors today don't even realize that's not important. Only yeast. Some medical doctor told me only yeast do autophagy or something. And I'm like, yeast?
What?
What are you talking about? Yeast? Anyhow, he doesn't even know the 2016 year. I can't pronounce his name. The Japanese scientist that won the Nobel Prize for autophagy.
Yeah.
My point is, though it's super important, only way to get it is in the fastest state. I did it because my left side here, my left kidney was backing up and my lymph node was swollen a little bit. And I thought that's not okay. So I got right into the dry fast and then boom, here we go. Cellular metabolic waste come in.
Did you break it already?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. I love that. I've never done 2.5 days of dry fasting. I've done 24 hours, maybe a little bit longer, 5-day water fast, looking at glucose and ketones. But I'm curious to maybe push myself a little bit more for a dry fast during a time where I'm more like rest, recovery, and not as active. I think that would be a cool thing to do.
Will you be surprised the energy level I stayed up. It stayed high.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I was on. Yeah. Right.
Amazing human body. Okay, now we can go back to insulin.
Okay.
How many years does it take of this process of insulin just being produced by the beta cells over and over and over until
14 years.
14 years until the blood
14
sugars change and you're diagnosed. Okay.
14 years. Whitehall study, 38,000 people, 14-year study. And the sad part, if I can say, is those in the process were getting pats on the back, right? Hey, your sugar's good, your sugar's fine, you're okay, but I'm gaining weight. But your sugar's fine, but I'm erectile dysfunction. Your sugar's fine, but I'm got heart disease, but I've got cancer. Your sugar's fine. But I'm anxiety, depression. Your sugar's okay. It's like, well, but nobody checked again, and this is maybe a good time to bring up Dr. Joseph Kraft's work. 14,683 blood glucose with insulin. That's the key, with insulin, not just sugar. Everybody said, well, that's just, it kills me when the patients come to me or clients say, well, my doctor's checking my insulin. Really, you've been in the office for 5 hours? Oh, I was never in the office for 5 hours. Well, the only way to check a proper insulin, to do it properly, is a 5-hour test. You take a baseline, you drink 75 grams of glucose, and then you test it basically every hour after that to see that it goes up, and then it comes back down. But in Joseph Kraft's work with 14,683 cases, he found 84% of the time there was compensatory hyperinsulinemia going on. So the beta cells, the islands of Langerhans, producing a little bit more insulin every year to keep those sugars within the A1Cs within normal limits, right? And yet every kind of condition, chronic degenerative condition that you could name was happening to these people. And it happens still today. You talked about the 88%. And was a journal of the College of Cardiology, clinical cardiology came out with the latest study was 93.2%.
93.
Yeah. That's a lot of people. That's almost 100%.
I know.
I mean, what are we going to wait for 100% till we actually do something about this? I mean, it's so crazy. And then the Diabetic Association does not measure insulin, even though it's the most metabolically active and most important. You can make an argument, a huge argument, no pun intended. But if you want muscles, it's insulin. If you want to get rid of fat, it's insulin. If you want to make a body composition correctly, it's insulin. And yet they, look, what's your sugar? Well, my GTT is this, my fasting sugar is that. And if they take insulin, it's fasting. Okay, when does insulin hurt you? When you're fasting or when you're eating? Okay, so that's why I came up with the calculator. It's a good time to pull up the book if that's okay.
Yeah, please share it. Your book is called The Insulin Thin Diet. Look at it right there.
Diet, 300-page book with cookbook in there with insulin numbers at the top, not awesome. Carbs, not fat, no fat, but fat's super important because this is still leaning towards keto. Of course, it's how we mitigate it: fiber, fat, and fasting. We call it the 3 Fs. So inside the book, we have a calculator. It's a web-based calculator, and you can actually throw in your macros, your fats, your proteins, and it'll come up with an insulin rise that's based off the food insulin index. And I hired a guy from MIT because I'm not smart enough to do it myself. He created an algorithm, and we made a calculator, and this is how we can find out. Because after the fact, if everybody's taking tests for insulin, if they are, they should, but you can't go into your doctor's office for 5 hours. and sit down there and, well, my insulin's too high now. It's late. It's gone. The effects have happened. And so, so we want to calculate insulin before we eat our next meal. So what?
Brilliant idea. So the book has that calculator. When they get the book, they could learn how to use it, and then they could identify.
Absolutely. There's a video inside there and everything to show them how to use it. As a matter of fact, there's 37 videos in this book, tutorial videos in the book as well. That's the.
Where's the best? Where can they get the book? Where's the best place for them to get it?
It's on Amazon, and it's also available at the stan.store/Dr. Grego.
Stan/store/Dr. Grego. We're going to put that in the notes down below. It's called The Insulin Thin Diet, the lazy way to lose weight. I love it. Hey, I want to take a minute to share something with you as we take a break from the video you're watching. One of the most common things I see to why people don't have enough energy levels, they have trouble building lean muscle mass, they have brain fog, fatigue, and they don't feel good is because of a deficiency in a hormone called testosterone. Now, testosterone is a very important hormone to have in a healthy amount for both men and for women. So how do you reclaim your vitality? How do you reclaim this very important fat burning and muscle building hormone? Well, you can do it with a powerful supplement called Upgraded T. It has been my go-to for naturally elevating testosterone levels. Upgraded T is from Upgraded Formulas, and it contains the highest quality of ingredients that have been proven scientifically to increase testosterone production. Now, as I mentioned, if you're a woman watching this is very important for you just as a man watching this right now. Upgraded T is a natural and safe way to boost testosterone levels. When you boost testosterone levels, it's going to increase your sex drive, vitality. It could help replace fatigue with all-day energy. It'll help you lose that stubborn belly fat. Testosterone is required for fat burning, so it'll help you with the last 5 to 10 pounds that you're looking to lose. It helps you be in a better mood, helps with your memory and focus. So here's the 3-step approach. Step 1, take 2 capsules of Upgraded T with water every morning. It does not break your fast. You can have it with food or without food. Step number 2, notice your energy levels and dominate your day with more confidence and more vitality. Step number 3, wake up the next day having better sleep and just keep doing what you're doing. As simple as that. So if you want to get your hands on Upgraded Formulas, Upgraded T, and any of their awesome products like their Upgraded Magnesium and their hair mineral analysis testing kit, head over to upgradedformulas.com. And if you use the coupon code KETOSIS at checkout, they're going to give you 15% off your entire order. That is upgradedformulas.com. Ketosis at checkout. We're going to drop that link down below. And let's get back to today's video. What are your thoughts on a continuous glucose monitor for looking at postprandial glucose to see what's happening with your insulin levels?
If you're not one of the 84% that has compensatory hyperinsulinemia, then I think it's great. If you don't know, get to your doctor's office, get the 5-hour test. It's the only way you're going to find out.
So what you're saying is if 84%, according to Kraft, 84% of people, let's say they throw in a CGM, they might see favorable levels of postprandial glucose, but it's overcompensating over time. They're still getting insulin resistance.
Except because of excessive insulin pumping out of the pancreas, keeping the glucose looking semi close to normal or in normal range. And
what about? Well,
I was going to say just quickly, I can't emphasize enough that the preeminent disaster maker in our human bodies and in our health is not sugar, it's insulin. It's hyperinsulin. It's insulin resistance, causes metabolic syndrome. Remember, they're all three the same terms. They're interchangeable. Yeah. So it's not hyper sugar, it's not hyperglycemia, right? It's hyperinsulin. It's because remember, the whole time, like during the Whitehall test for the for 14 years, the 36,000 people that he studied, that were still getting sick. They were coming down with diabetes. They were becoming obese. They had anxiety, depression. They had PCOS. They had erectile dysfunction, but their sugars were normal. Hello? Yeah. So who's the disaster here? Who's causing the disaster? Wait, it's the hyperinsulin. Again, that's why somebody should write a book. Somebody should get a hold of this guy because it's just not fair. It's not fair to people who think it's, again, I'm checking car tire pressure and saying it's fine because that's your sugar, but your engine is shot. you can't drive another mile in it because your engine is kaput, right?
Makes so much sense, Doc. It makes so much sense. What are your thoughts on looking at C-peptide as well as a blood metric?
When I did, listen to this, you're jumping down a rabbit hole now, Ben, and I'm glad you went there because I wasn't going to go there. But since you said that, here we go. Because I want to know fructose, right? I was real curious about fructose, that it doesn't need insulin to get into the cell, any cell. I thought, wow, that's either really awesome and interesting, or it's a big fat lie. So let's go ahead and do a fructose tolerance test. So I looked up on Amazon, it's my first go-to place, and I looked up and I said, okay, there's crystalline fructose, but I always do a little bit deeper. Where's that fructose coming from? Turns out it's coming from corn oil. Corn oil is a polypeptide. Fructose is a monosaccharide, excuse me, polysaccharide. For some reason I'm thinking about protein. Poly, polysaccharide, and fructose is a monosaccharide, and it's a hexose. And this fructose is a pentose coming from corn oil. So it's not true fructose. And again, they had to cleave it, they had to put sulfuric acid with it, high pressure and high heat. And I always tell people, if I was to throw sulfuric acid on your face and put you in a boiler and a pressure cooker and leave you there for a few hours and come back, you wouldn't look the same either. So the deal is, that's not fructose. So I looked all around. Everywhere I looked, it was coming from corn oil. And I'm not talking about high fructose corn oil. That's a whole nother disastrous animal. I'm talking about just corn oil that they were cleaving to get the fructose, to quote unquote pure fructose. And these are where all our tests are coming from, right? All our studies that cause fructose causes fatty liver, blah, blah, blah. It's like, this is not even sugar from fruit, which is the true fructose. So anyway, I came in I went to LabCorp with 1,000 grams of watermelon, because I like watermelon. It's very high in fructose. Actually,
Me too.
Yeah, right. So it's like 45 grams of fructose, 15 grams of glucose, because every fruit still has a little glucose. You can't get rid of it all. Of course, there's no 100% fructose fruit. So the point is, I'm sitting there and I'm waiting to take the test, and she goes, what's that in your hand? And I said, well, I'm going to do a fructose tolerance test. She said, oh, well, we have some fructose here. So I said, but no, ma'am, it's not the same fructose. And she said, well, let me find the code for it anyways. So she goes into the system to find the fructose tolerance test with insulin and C-peptide. And the reason why you're asking about C-peptide, because C-peptide is the connective peptide that holds the isomer, the fructose, the amino acids of insulin rather, together. And it's not destroyed in the first pass of the liver like insulin is. And so that's why C-peptide is more effective to find out whether your insulin is where it is. And so I was going to do both, but they don't have a code. They did not have one code for fructose tolerance with insulin, or fructose tolerance with C-peptide. So I was like, wow, what is this going on here? Is this some kind of conspiracy or something that we're into? Because why don't we know? Why isn't there pure crystalline fructose? Why can't we test this for fruit and see if it doesn't need insulin? Because, the ramifications of that for any diabetic, hello, if I don't need insulin and my insulin's refractory, it's just not working, or it's ineffective, or whatever, I'm not producing enough, or it's pro-insulin, it's only 5% effective, it's not matured, it hasn't been cleaved off. So my point is, Ben, wow. So I went home, and my office manager is a phlebotomist. So, I borrowed some because I'm not in clinic anymore. I sold my building, but I have a friend that is. So he gave me the spinner, and he gave me all the hookups, the butterflies and everything. And she stuck me, and we did it. And we did it twice because, a good science experiment's got to be repeated. So the first time we did it, it was interesting. It was on the high end. Insulin was 24, which is right at the high end of insulin. And C-peptide was right at the high end of itself. And I said, well, I know that it's preferential fuel. So when fructose comes in, glucose leaves. It gets displaced. That's why initially when diabetics start going on fruit, well, it's too much sugar. It's not too much sugar. Your second team is getting booted off the field and told to sit down on the bench. You're no longer playing a game. So that's why you get displaced and you get a little sugar dysregulation for about 2-3 weeks until it regulates. So anyway, so that's what's happening. So I waited 4 weeks, and then I redid the test again. Only this time I stopped in the middle of the test. Because the whole time, by the way, I'm wearing a continuous glucose monitor, right? Because I know that I'm not compensatory. I don't have compensatory hyperinsulinemia.
Okay.
Right. So I'm seeing that, and my glucose at that time it went to 125 the first time I did the test. 125.
How much watermelon did you have?
1,000 grams.
1,000 grams every time.
Yep, 1,000 grams every
Okay.
time. Okay, so I ate it again. We took the baseline, ate it, waited, took the first reading, and it was my sugar was 177, right?
Wow.
177. So I stopped it right then because there's no way that insulin is not coming out at 177. I mean, it's coming out a lot at 177. Yeah. So we just stopped the test, and then I started thinking, what is going on? And I happened to look at a picture of a ancient watermelon fruit before it was crossbred and hybridized. And oh my gosh, there was only a little bit of red in the little watermelon, all this core, like all running. What's the core? It's fiber. Oh, so that's why every time you see sugar in nature, it comes with if there's a lot of sugar, there's a lot of fiber. Sugar cane itself, if you ever bit it, you would break a tooth, right? Because there's so much fiber running through the cane before it's processed. So I thought, man, this hybridization and crossbreeding has led, in watermelon's case anywhere, to the lack of fiber. So the fructose, not the fructose, the glucose is still so high that it's just shooting through the roof. So we have to mitigate that with fiber. Now when I eat watermelon, I eat the melon alone or leave it alone because it's so hydrating. And again, it's so alkalizing and it's so watery that it dilutes your hydrochloric acid. That's why you don't want to eat anything else besides melons. And so I take fiber. And by the way, I don't know if this is a good time or not, but can we pop up? I'm so proud of this fiber. This is the latest, greatest fiber we just came up with. It's called super fiber. It's insoluble, soluble fiber, which mitigates insulin just like that. Also has Gymnase sylvestre for sugar cravings. And because people are such poor methylators, by the dopamine reward cascade just keeps going off too quickly, too chronically. And because we're poor methylated, methylation is one of the pathways that reuptakes as part of the homeostatic reuptake of dopamine to keep it in balance. And so we added something, again, everything's natural, 100% in here. And to help that dopamine, that food addiction, sugar cravings, berberine in the form of golden seal. A lot of people don't realize that 80% of golden seal is made out of berberine. The reason why I don't use single molecules or chemistry, I call it isolating chemistry, is because 90% of the time your body, basically your microbiome, produces a lot of these neurotransmitters or enzymes or vitamins or minerals or whatever it is, and then you shut down production if you take it on the outside. So we use herbs and glandulars because they're adaptogens. They're like a smorgasbord that's just sitting there waiting for your body to pick and choose when it wants. That's the other thing. If it's not the time, if you take 500 milligrams of vitamin C at 6 o'clock, maybe it needs it at 8, not at 6, right? And there's also duality. I talked about vitamin C. So if you see vitamin C in nature, it's never by itself because vitamin C is ascorbic acid. You always need zinc, selenium, manganese. You need these oppositions, to catalyze the vitamin C to make it readily uptakeable and not an irritant to the body. And so with that in mind, we're always focused on herbs and glandulars to get the body back into homeostasis, which is, of course, the ultimate goal of any human body.
That's right. I love it. No, I'm all for giving the body the building blocks to do what it needs to do. So you're a big fan of fat, fiber, and fasting. Those are the 3 Fs that you utilize with your program. 100%. What are some of your favorite fats? I was watching some of your videos. I know you're a big fan of like avocados, but what are some of your favorite fats for specifically insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes? And then what are your favorite fasting schedules that you like to use with your students?
Oh, sure. Wow, great question. First and foremost, for type 2s, we didn't even get to type 1s yet, but we should because it's exciting. Type 1,
we'll get to them. Yeah.
Right, there's 1.5 too. So type 2s, you got to empty the cell. It's a capacity issue. So again, what kind of diet doesn't try to put more food, whether it's from fat or not, into the cell? I don't know of one. Because if I eat anything, it's going to try to put more energy into the cell, and it's already full. So we have to empty. So it's intermittent fasting, hands down. So obviously you go to bed, your last meal is 5, 6 o'clock at night. You don't eat breakfast. You don't break fast because, with breakfast, and we start around 12 or 1 o'clock. I like a 5-hour window of eating, and then the rest in the fasted state to empty the cell. You got to empty that cell in type 2s so you can get this insulin sensitive again. Yeah.
Yep. I love that. So that's like an 18-6 sort of schedule, a 19-5 sort of schedule. I like that. So you're giving yourself enough time of digestion and fasting before bed. You're waking up and allowing your body to empty out the cells, pull fat from the liver in that fasted state. And then between, let's say, 12 and like 5 p.m., you have your eating window. What are some of the fats you like your clients to focus on during that eating window?
Avocados,
Yeah.
coconuts, and olives, olive oil, anything of that nature. Any of the good fat. I mean, good fats. Now, see, Ben, you might want to strike this from your thing because when we're going to go into proteins just a little bit because, and again, I have to give credit where credit is due. My mentor, Robert Morris, wow, what a doctor, an illuminated light of doctorhood or teaching. Doctor just means teacher in Latin, right? So it's not using big words like diffuse idiopathic skeletal hyperostosis concomitant with syringeal myocele. That's what I tell my patients. The point is that we're teachers, right? So
Yeah.
so at the end of the day, the proteins are, they say this, I don't want to be a graveyard for dead animal flesh. Okay, just me personally. I think and I know that we have to deconstruct these proteins because they're made for the animal. Whether it's a fish, a chicken, a turkey, a cow, their proteins are for them. And I look at it like Lincoln Logs or Legos, where they built up with in their bodies the amino acids to make a home so they can use it for their injured muscles or their DNA or the connective tissue or collagen, whatever they need to do. And when we eat their flesh and that protein, then that's a complex amino acid or complex Lincoln Logs that we have to pull apart one by one, which takes energy, and then restack, which takes energy, back into our what we could use our proteins for through their amino acids. And again, I'm so and it's second hand in a way because where does the animal get their plant based, right? They eat plants, whatever it is, right? They're going to eat plants. So why not just go to the plants? One of the best form again, avocados are you're huge. They have all 9 essential amino acids in them. I always want to say quinoa. It's not quinoa. It's
Quinoa.
quinoa. Thank you. Subconscious block, but quinoa, right, is all 9. And quinoa is a fruit. Quinoa is a fruit. Avocado is a fruit. I like.
Isn't quinoa? I thought quinoa was a grain. No, I know avocado's a fruit.
No. Look it up. It is a fruit. Quinoa is a fruit. Quinoa is a fruit, and avocado is a fruit.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It is a fruit. Yeah, I didn't know that. I know avocado. So,
Mhm.
are you more plant-based vegetarian? Like, what is your style? I'm hearing that you're against eating too much animal protein.
Sure. So I
I
am.
want to. What do you do?
Here's another touchy, but hopefully people listen to my words correctly, so you don't misinterpret, please. Because I am not an evolutionist creationist. I believe in God. I know I didn't create my body, and I'm not asking anybody else to believe that as well. I'm just saying that we are 96.7% primate molecules. So from a science perspective, E equals mc squared, right? We can't create matter or destroy it, only changes shape. So all the molecules that are here have already been here. They're reheated, rehashed leftovers. The creator decided to put the molecules from a primate together 97% to make a human. That wasn't my decision. That was their decision. I'm not saying we evolved from them. I'm saying the molecules that were left around were put together to make a human. And so primates are exclusively frugivores. They're fruitarians, unless they're chased out of their tropical forests to make room for the cows so they can eat, and they get up into the mountains and they eat whatever they have to eat. But the point is, they're exclusively fruitarians. And so I believe that our tooth, or the way our teeth are structured, if you look at the canines from a carnivore, they're a lot longer, a lot sharper. Their hydrochloric acid is a lot stronger, 1,800% stronger. Their intestines are much smaller, about 6 to 8 feet on the average. We have about 38, 40 feet of intestines, so they can process those meats in and out. Meats are also highly acidic. Now, this is where we're going to get a little biochemistry, so I apologize ahead of time. But all meats are nitrogen based. All meats, doesn't matter where it comes from. All foods, and let me back up and let's see if we can break down this simply for people. Whenever we eat something, everything we eat breaks down to carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. When we eat fruit, it's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. We eat meat, it's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. We eat dairy, it's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Vegetable, carbon, okay. So we eat, it breaks down to carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. It gets into our cells at the level of the mitochondria, which is simply a bacteria, by the way. Mitochondria are simply bacteria that have been here long before we were. And they're pretty smart. So the mitochondria are actually like the lungs and the colon. The lungs and the colon part of the cell. So when the carbon, hydrogen, oxygen gets into the mitochondria, they transfer their energy through a process rather called oxidation phosphorylation. Oxidation is losing or delivering an electron. It's giving up an electron. Okay, why would it do that? So that it could make ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is what? A rechargeable battery. So every cell in our body, about 100 trillion, give or take, need adenosine triphosphate. Otherwise, you couldn't see Ben or me. You couldn't hear us, and you couldn't be nodding your head or shaking your head back and forth if it's not making sense. Hopefully it is. But you couldn't be doing any of that because ATP is allowing you to do that. Now, when you use that energy, the ATP downgrades into ADP or AMP, right? Adenosine monophosphate or adenosine diphosphate. And then it recharges through oxidation phosphorylation again back into ATP. And the cycle continues as long as you have fats or you have carbon, hydrogen, or oxygen. Remember, fats break down to carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Everything breaks down to carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And then, just like your car burns fuel, you have an exhaust pipe, right? Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide comes out the pipe. If you eat meat, the exhaust that comes out from making ATP and using ATP, ADP, AMP, right back around again, the exhaust that comes out from that is nitrogen. And nitrogen is a cation. And cations are acidic. So that's where we get the phrase acidic ash. When you eat something or drink something or rub on something or bathe in something that produces acidity, that's what we mean. And so cheese would break down to lactic acid, and also sulfur would be a sulfuric ash. So basically you have nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus as the three main cations that break down when we eat meats or cheese or processed foods. And so these things, again, leave an acidity or an acidic ash in the body. And remember, acid breaks down the body. It's corrosive, it's toxic, it's hypoxic. It's what happens when you leave a baby's diaper on too long and you pull it back and you see red and you see pink and you see rashy tissue. Why is that? Acids, because of acids. So it's acid. All right, so then the alkaline side of things would be fruit and vegetables. They would leave an alkaline ash that would be an anion, that would be something like calcium, magnesium, potassium, or sodium. And so I would, since there's only two sides of chemistry, one destroys and deteriorates the cell. And remember, our cells are structure function. So if you change the shape of the cell, you change the function of the cell. And the cell is sitting in, by the way, this is going to break open a couple of things, but the lymphatic system is a cholesterol-based system. So let me just shoot off this real quick because I think this is super important. Cholesterol is the wrong target, 100% the wrong target. Our brains are mostly cholesterol. 100% of our sex hormones are sterols, cholesterol. 100% of our bile is cholesterol. The list goes on and on. We need cholesterol. We use cholesterol. We are cholesterol beings. Our 100 trillion cells are diphospholipid membranes. The lipid is cholesterol. It is a saturated fat or monounsaturated. So you say you have saturated fat, monounsaturated fat, polyunsaturated. It's the polyunsaturated fats, but not just the polyunsaturated fats that are the problem. It's the esterified, what they call triglycerides, which are polyunsaturated. They looked open. We dissected clots. We know they're made out of macrophages, white blood cells, because they're first in line of defense. And then we know that they're also made out of PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids. So these things are the toxic things. They're the white visceral fat. That is polyunsaturated esterified cholesterols. It's not from fatty acids. Listen, that's the other thing that people say, well, I'm fat because I eat fat. No, ma'am. No, sir. When you eat fat, let's just say if we eat good fat first, like coconuts or avocados, They come down again, they enter the stomach, go through the digestion, hopefully correctly without being interrupted with fluid, with drinking. And then they open up the pyloric sphincter, goes down into the duodenum, 9-inch colon. Microvilli come up, they pick it up. And down inside the microvilli, inside the duodenum, are what's called chylomicrons. And these chylomicrons pick up the good fat and they shuttle it off to your pancreas to make bile. They shuttle it off to your testes and your ovaries to make those sex hormones. They shuttle it off to your brain to make brain cells. They shuttle it off to any one of the 100 trillion cells that need that are cell dividing and they need a new cell wall. This is what they do. Now, if you eat bad fat, seed oils, let's go to the seed oils, right? If you're eating vegetable oil, canola oil, grapeseed oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, rice oil, any of these seed oils, your body cannot process. So your liver has the lovely job of making them, putting them, toxic Tupperware. Your liver puts it in Tupperware containers, right? And it's called visceral fat. It's called white visceral fat. And that's the fat that's not metabolically active. You go to the gym and you work your butt and you look good, your legs look good, your arms look good, your face looks good, but your stomach doesn't go away. Because first of all, you got to get fat adapted. You got to get into keto, because if your insulin's high, you'll never get to the fat. I'm always amused at people that say, I'm low carbing it. Well, guess what? Carbohydrates have a system for fuel, for burning fuel, for making fuel, and that's glycolysis. So no matter how many low carbs you do, you're not going to burn fat until you get over into keto, your adipocytes. Because only when you get in ketosis can you burn fat, because those two fuel systems are separate and distinct. They do not cross over. Not now, not ever. So coming back to it then, eating seed oils makes you fat, gives you the fat that you're talking about, not saturated fat. Remember what grandma, I love this example. Grandma back in the early 80s, right? She was cooking with lard and butter. Grandma, stop. You need to use hydrogenated oil, margarine, and trans fats, Crisco oil. They're much healthier for you. We should never argue with grandma. Never argue with grandma. You're never going to win, right? So no,
grandma's always right.
Always right, 100%. So yes, you need good, healthy, saturated fats. Your lymphatic system is a cholesterol-based system. Your toilet, when your cells go to the bathroom, that's in lymph. That's what's carrying things away. Cholesterol, lipoproteins. They're like little trains that carry toxic Tupperware out of your body and build things if it happens to be a good fat in there. So, okay, Ben.
Okay, so our lots to unpack there, and we only have a few more minutes. So, we agree on a lot of things. But the majority of what you shared totally align with. So here's what my, not argument, but my side, right? When we talk about animal protein, I have seen, not just for myself, but for hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of students where I put them on a carnivore diet for 30 days, 60 days, maybe 90 days max. I'm not dogmatic about it, but I've seen it transform their health, their labs. I've seen it do it to my labs with inflammation markers. I've done panels, helps with autoimmune. I've seen it done amazing things, primarily because they can't process a lot of these anti-nutrients in plants, like the quinoa, right? It has these proteins in it, these amino acids, I should say, but some of it is locked by anti-nutrients, and there's a lot of oxalates and like spinach and kale and almond. So a lot of people have trouble processing it. And so when I shift them into a meat-based diet, a variation of a meat-based diet, it transforms their health. So how do you explain that part, the carnivore movement?
I'm glad you mentioned that. We're in agreement. My 90-day cell phone program, we go carnivore for the first 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
We drop everybody in. But here's the thing. It is acid. And if acid wins, you lose, right, in the end. So we're seeing these people not just for 6 months, a year, or maybe 2 years. What happens 5 years down the road, 10 years? You can't be that acid that long. You will lose that game. There's only two sides of chemistry. One helps, alkaline. The other hurts, acid. Meats are acidic. Protein is acidic.
So we align there. I don't agree with long-term carnivore either.
And Ben, if I can interject real quick, because your point about the oxalates and the phytic acid and the saponins and the tannins and all that. To this I say, and this is going to be, people are going to kick themselves in the head when they hear this, but if you drink when you eat, you will not be able to break those down. You will not be able to deal with those. It's inherent in those plants, yes, but it's also inherent in us not to drink when we eat. In fact, our hydration should come from the fruits and the vegetables that we eat because that's H3O2. That's not H2O. And Dr. Gerald Pollack should have won the Nobel Prize for his work with the
Yeah,
fourth
yeah.
phase of water, right? And that's in fruit water. That's in vegetable water, watermelon water, coconut juice, coconut water, cucumber water, 100%. So,
Lesson learned. So that's a big lesson. Don't drink with your meals. When you're at a restaurant, decline the water, decline the drink. Don't do it. Separate it
unless you're
30,
drinking
60
something
minutes.
pH of 2,
Yeah. Well, you're probably not.
no, you'd be taking your teeth out and your
Yeah,
throat
maybe
the wrong
maybe
way.
maybe some apple cider vinegar. What's the pH of apple cider vinegar?
So about it's around 3.
Okay, so that would be, that could help with breaking down fat.
Mhm.
Uh, very interesting. Okay, so there's a lot that we agree with. The biggest takeaways I think from my audience would be number one, know that you can reverse insulin resistance in type 2 diabetes. It's a lifestyle disease that needs to be treated or reversed, I should say, with lifestyle. We didn't touch upon type 1. Maybe you could give some bullet points for type 1 real quick.
Okay, unless you want, if you want to invite me back, I'll be happy to go over type 1, type 1.5.
Yeah, I want to invite you back either way, but I know there's somebody who's type 1 diabetic
Oh,
listening or
sure.
watching. And they're like, they forgot about me. So give them some insights before we do a full podcast on it.
Wow, absolutely. So type 1s, if the islands of Langerhans and the B cells are incapable of creating enough insulin, or if the insulin they're creating is proinsulin, which is an immature insulin, it's only 5% effective, then they need herbs, they need glandulars, they need to get rid of the interstitial stagnation that caused the breakdown of those cells in the beta cells in the pancreas. And so we call it KIA. I call it for an acronym for short. K stands for kidneys. Kidneys filtration right here. It looks a lot like this. Again, cellular. If this sits around the islands of Langerhans in the beta cells, they do not produce enough insulin, the right insulin. I is mitigating the insulin then at that point, fiber, fat, and fasting. Kind of already touched on that. And then the A is alkaline or acid. We got to get on the alkaline side of chemistry. I always like nature's Skittles, which are the berries, the red raspberries, blackberries, blueberries, the astringent fruits like grapefruits and oranges as well for a type 1. Again, remembering we want to give that pancreas a rest. So when we don't ask it for anything, then it can rest. The autophagy and apoptosis can start coming in even. So when we ask it to rest, when we go to the fruits, again, fructose does not need insulin to nutrify the cell, to get nutrition into the cell. It's called non-facilitated diffusion, right? Is what
I love that. KIA, kidneys, insulin, alkalinity. I know that there's nothing that shows we could reverse type 1 diabetes yet, but there is Dr. Walter Longo's research on mice being able to reverse their get their beta cells back online to produce insulin in type 1 diabetic mice. So maybe there is a chance that in our lifetime that could happen for type 1 diabetics. But with that being said, you could still really help out your lifestyle so you don't have to take so much insulin, and you could take some breaks off the insulin by following some of the steps that you mentioned. Anything else you want to add to that?
I do. I want to say that we actually help type 1s and type 1.5s regain the function of the pancreas. And it's like this, Ben. If you look at these nails on my fingers, these are brand new from last year. The skin on my arm here, but right, the hair on my head, stomach cells when in indigestion, proper digestion, a pH of 2, 5 minutes, they're out. And if they don't get reproduced, we have hydrochloric acid stains on our shirts. So in fact, the kidneys do reproduce, the liver does, you can lose 75% of your liver, it still does everything it's supposed to do and come back. So yes, cells do in fact reproduce, but again, you have to get the kidneys, the interstitial stagnation away from those cells, the acidity away so that they can bathe in alkalinity and their structure can come back to normal. And so they can function normal again. So yes, that's exactly how. It's the power of fruits. I mean, there's a whole show on that. There's 13,000 angstroms per 10 units of fruit versus 9 for vegetables, about 3,000 for meat, and 1,000 for dairy. So the higher end of energy, again, we can measure that in ORP, which is oxidative reduction potential, a meter, and see that there's just more energy in fruit. Anything that grows closest to the sun has the most energy. So we can, in fact, reproduce new cells all the time. It's just a matter of, is there going to be a burnt brick pulled out with a brand new burnt brick put back in? or a nice red brick that's functioning correctly, right, when it gets replaced.
That makes sense. So did you say you've reversed type 1 diabetes where they're insulin dependent completely? You were able to reverse that, or have their
Yeah, well, time out. This is the conversation. I don't like to use the term reverse or cure. I like going back to normal, right? And so if they were ever normal, that's the catch. If our diabetic patients were ever normal, we can get them back there. If they weren't normal, then we need CRISPR, we need cross-linking collagens, we need polypeptides like 5-amino-1-MQ, something to rewrite the DNA. We don't do that. I'm just saying, but if they were ever normal.
So for example, 25 years old, they get diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. They don't do anything about it. It gets so bad that by their 33 years old, now the beta cells are not producing insulin. That person, you could get them back to normal.
100%. Yeah, because they're still making new cells. They're just making new damaged cells.
Yeah.
Those cells, if you look at them under a microscope, right, 6 months later, they're not the same cell. Even though they're like, that's damaged, it's still not working. But it's a different cell that's not working and damaged. Yeah. So that cell can be, in fact, be made new again to function. But again, that's the fluids, the two fluids, and the two sides of chemistry, right? You have to do it.
Fascinating. We'll definitely do round 2. Hey, I want to just briefly interrupt the video you're watching to share something with you. One of my favorite companies that I use for health and longevity and biohacking is a company called BonCharge. And they have a whole range of incredible products, including the blue light blocking glasses you see me wear right now. But one of my favorite products from them is an infrared sauna blanket. That's right. You don't have to spend a ton of money investing in a sauna or spending so much time driving to a facility with the sauna. They actually created a sauna blanket that you could use in the comfort of your own home. And I use this all the time. Why would we want to even do a sauna? Well, there's a lot of research and a lot of studies showing the benefits of infrared sauna. The sauna blanket works by raising your heart rate to a workout or a training session. So you burn more calories while you're actually lying down and relaxing. You could burn up to 600 calories in one single session. Also, it's going to cause you to sweat. And one method of flushing out toxins from your body is through sweat. There's also one of my favorite benefits, this endorphin release, endorphin rush you get from using a sauna blanket. And every time I get out of the sauna blanket, I feel like I just got a 60-minute massage. And that's because of the endorphin benefit from it. So how this works differently than a regular sauna is that it works by using infrared light, which heats the body directly rather than the air around you like a traditional sauna. This means you get the same benefit at a lower heat. So it's easy to set up. It's super convenient. 30 to 40 minutes will suffice in terms of the length of the sessions. And you do that 2 to 3 times a week, you're going to feel amazing. Add that to your keto fasting protocol and watch what it does for your results. You could do it while you watch TV. You could do it while you read a book. I do it while I listen to an audiobook. So if you want to learn more about the BonCharge products, including the sauna blanket, head over to boncharge.com/KetoCamp. And if you use the coupon code KetoCamp at checkout, you'll get 15% off your sauna blanket. And actually, any of their products are 15% off with that code. BonCharge hooked you up. So head over to that domain or click the link down below and go get your BonCharge products. All right, let's get back to today's video. I have one quick final question that I ask all my guests. That's about a supplement called vitamin G. And I call it vitamin G because it's vitamin gratitude. And I'm a big believer in the healing effects of gratitude. My shirt right there, vitamin G. So Doc, what are you grateful for? What's your vitamin G today?
Oh my gosh, to be here on your podcast. To get in front of you and your listeners who are maybe different, not so different view, maybe some confirmation for them as well about what you're teaching and what we're trying to get out there with. Just to be able to do what we do, to help people. At the end of the day, I believe that's why I'm here, is to help others. That's my purpose, and that's why
I love it, brother. Yeah, well, you're a very smart guy, very knowledgeable, very, very caring guy. I learned so much today, and I look forward to doing round 2. Your book is called The Insulin Thin Diet. You can get it on Amazon. Hold it up for the YouTube viewers right there. There you go. What is your website if they want to learn more about you, work with you, and learn more about your program?
Just add a .com.
Okay. So the insulinThinDiet.com. We'll put that down below. Just add a .com. Mike, thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing your knowledge and experience with me and the guests today and the listeners today. I appreciate you. We'll do round 2. And thank you again, brother.
Thank you, Ben.